Hello, welcome everyone in the room. Perhaps most of you might have seen parts of that talk at least, you know, which I gave at the CSI seminar. Looking around. Okay, good that you haven't been around for the CSI seminar. And we do have, I think, one guest. Welcome, Steve. Good to see in the cyberspace audience here. So this is the final talk for the XR lecture series in the ARIVE network. Good to see lots of students here. I like that, and other people, you know. Actually, the topic is about, it has two aspects. So one is I talk a little bit about what pervasive augmented reality is, with a topic we are working on for a while, also, you know, with a couple of projects in the lab. And then I talk about the ethics around it, a little bit, at least my view of what I think, what are ethical aspects with pervasive augmented reality. If you have questions in between, just feel free to ask. I can make that quite interactive if you want. So let's see. Yeah. So first I start with our profession, and I will define what I mean with our profession, what that actually means. Then pervasive augmented reality, what it means, and then I give you some example scenarios, and the main part is probably the ethical considerations. This is all research in the making, right? So it's still, I was working on that for ages, and I always wanted to write something about it, and now Tobias is helping me, probably writing a paper and submitting it hopefully soonish, by the end of September. Okay, let's start with that one, and I probably have to unpin, how do I do that? Pin video, and that's me. So, information and computer scientists as engineers. So I understand that we are not all engineers, right? But I just put us all into that one box. Either we are developers or designers of interactive experiences, or we are more computing focused people or more info-based people. But in the end, we all create artifacts of some sort, which lead to a new experience somehow, interactive experiences. That's what we are in our labs mainly concerned with, right? So I subsume that under the term engineers because we create things, right? So now the question is, the big question is there any ethics with engineering, right? And so when we look in the literature and the philosophy literature, so you'll find, you know, different viewpoints, and one is, and I take that one here from the early 90s. So one point of view would be, and that is her point of view, is engineers do not have any social responsibilities. And as engineers, they only have social responsibilities as people, as persons, right? So that's one take, and that's actually a quite widespread view. And I'm not criticizing it, but I'm going with the other label. Actually, I think we as engineers, we do have a responsibility for what we create. Right. So, but all I want you to do is to think about that. What is actually your position? Right. You can have one or the other, but the thing is that you have to think about it. Right. Are we responsible for the things we do, or are we actually the experts who produce something? But whatever is done with it is actually a different story. Right. And you can have that position as well. But as I said, I would propose that we take that. At least we share the responsibility for our artifacts. Right. And that's my position I'm taking. So what does that entail? Actually, there are four main duties involved. And when most of you are probably, you know, a member of some sort of engineering or computing association, and normally there's a code of ethics and there are some duties attached to that. And normally when we work in a professional capacity, we have duties at least to those four groups. So one is duties to society at large. So what to do is our technologies, what we are producing, is that benefiting society, or what, and that can be still, it's up to you to decide in the end what you think, what are the positive and the negative aspects of the technology we're introducing. There's probably, it's hard to measure it with one yardstick or something, right? Then of course we work normally in other organizations unless we are just self-employed. So we have certain duties towards our employers. So we are working in a certain framework within a small or medium or large enterprise. For instance, this university is a very large enterprise, and so we have duties to, you know, work within the constraints of our employers. Then we have duties to our clients. So normally we don't develop the things or for ourselves. It is for others, and that can be a huge group. But let's imagine you work for a client, then, and you look into the IEEE Code of Ethics, for instance, there are a couple of rules which say you should not lie to your client, you should not over or underestimate your product, you should not lie about the functionality which the client can expect, and so on and so forth, right? So it's actually duties towards your clients, and you have to be honest, and you have to use your technical judgment, engineering judgment to deliver, right? And then, of course, amongst ourselves, we have duties, right, to inform ourselves, to educate ourselves, to watch and to say, oh, okay, perhaps we, used you, that what you do is probably not super duper these days. I would do it in a different way. And then Stu would say, whatever, right? So, but these are the 4 groups, and I will, at the very end, I will come back to that, right? Okay. So now I try to apply that kind of thinking in terms of if we accept that we have at least a core responsibility and there are certain duties around that. So if we apply that to the field of pervasive augmented reality, what would that mean? So, but that means first you have to know what pervasive augmented reality is. And AR is actually, and hopefully you all recognize and realize that, is actually very hot these days, right? Augmented reality, glass, all the major big companies, they're into augmented reality research, some into development. Most of them develop some sort of goggles which are augmented reality goggles. And you see the standard examples here, like the Google glasses or Microsoft HoloLens, or the announced Apple glasses, or the Meta glasses, or something like that, right? So that's all. There's something happening in that space, right? And so this is one, perhaps, just an application idea or concept. How could it work? So normally you have a real environment, you have some virtual content, often it's 3D, and you try to place that into the view of the viewer. It's a simplified model here, but what we have to do for that, we have to provide the content and so on and so forth, but we have to have some device to experience that, and we have to track the users and monitor users in a lot of different ways, right? So this is what we normally do, and here we have Marcus Renner, our model for our super photo. Okay. So how does it work? So probably all of you should know that by now. So in very principle is, somehow we have to find out where we are and what is the environment. We have to locate ourselves in the environment, and then we start to track our position orientation in space and real space. And then we somehow have to capture what the real environment is or model it. And then we, provide our virtual content. Then we mix the real and the virtual to the best degree we can do. And then we track the user again, and we do that in a loop, and we do it so fast that we don't realize that it is actually one frame at a time. Normally we aim for 20 or more updates per second in that regard. Okay, so now when we talk, so this is augmented reality. So let's say traditional, conventional, old-fashioned augmented reality, right? So now we think about it as we always have that kind of augmentation going on, right? It's not that for the augmented reality experience, we are using some device, put it on, use it for 5 minutes or whatever, and then we do, our normal everyday things, right? So pervasive augmented reality means it's a continuous experience of mediation, right? And that means it's context aware. So you see the whole list of things down here, right? It's the thing we always, it's not that we put one glasses on for one task and the next for the next task. It's always the same thing. It's individualized for us. It's aware of where we are, what we intend to do, and so on and so forth, right? So, but that brings it to a different spin, right? It is actually, if it is constantly computer mediated, what does that actually mean for our perception, for how we communicate, and so on and so forth, right? So now just imagine, and that would be something like fictional glasses, right, from one of the major companies, let's say, and they're all working on it, Facebook and Microsoft and Apple and Google and so forth. So let's imagine we would have those glasses which integrate all those sensing and display technologies. That's not a conclusive list, right? So we would have, high resolution displays, and we would have built-in eye tracking. We would have sound capturing, but also sound displays, right? So we would determine the position and orientation of the users in space. We would capture the environment. We would have lots of other sensors. For instance, Arindam talked about this week on the Tuesday lecture, we have EEG on it and ECG and temperature sensors and galvanic skin response and everything, and all built into the glasses and integrated, right? And we wear them all the time, right? A continuous, pervasive augmented reality experience. So there are a couple of main technical challenges to that, right? So one is, registration tracking. It has to be super precise and super accurate. If we want to overlay something in the real world, we have to be very accurate with what we're tracking. The visual and other displays have to be of high fidelity, right? Not only the visuals, but the acoustic and the haptic and whatever we have. We have to integrate all that computational power somehow into our gear. Can be all into the glasses, or the glasses and your phone, or the glasses and your phone and some connection to some whatever computing unit or whatever it is. But the whole thing has to work somehow. And finally, the way how we modulate the reality. What do we do, right? Like people like, you know, like Jonathan are working on it. So what are we really doing to modulate that reality? But this talk is not about all those challenges, because we work on them, right? So and we work on those challenges, but it's more about, yeah, let's assume we have it. What would that actually mean in terms of a user experience? So some example scenarios. I start with a very generic example, right? So you would have those glasses, right? Some glasses, and they are super equipped, and they have all these properties, right? And then now you look down George Street here in Dunedin, and that would be your modulated or unmediated view, right? You see the world as it is, and the only thing you have is glasses. And those of you who wear prescription glasses know that this is the normal view, right? So now, if you start to turn them on, and then suddenly, you know, you get that augmented. It's all nicely aligned and registered in the real world, and you see a lot of information. It can be navigation information, it can be advertisements, it can be whatever it is. So you bring into the view of the person wearing the glasses. And not only for that, I turn it on and turn it off again. It's that constant pervasive augmented reality experience, right? I give you another example, more probably more practical, you know, roadside assistant example, right? So your car breaks down, you know, your super modern electric car. Normally it would drive autonomously, but it does not, it failed. And so you have to call someone. So you would have that kind of augmented experience in a very, you know, very simple way. But again, you're not using then your Hyundai, Mercedes or whatever glasses to get that experience. It is your experience, right? You have your glasses, and this is what you get, right? You get a different experience with the same set of gear, right? If you take that street example a little bit more further, and you would have that kind of, and perhaps some of you saw those, you know, crazy Korean and Japanese movies, right, where you show, you know, all these advertisements are always in the view and so on and so forth. That can be quite distracting, and there can be a lot of clutter, also, you know, visual clutter, but also mental perceptual clutter and so on and so forth. So that's quite a bit of a challenge already, right? Or you have a casual, I meet Alex situation, and then I look at him and see, oh yeah, okay, oh, it's quite a low age index. Oh no, it's increasing. No, great, man. Or you shouldn't tweet that, by the way. And so you get information about that person because you get that augment, and then you can imagine that you get all that information of Alex without, you know, taking out your phone and, you know, checking his Facebook profile and all that, right? So you get it at the right place in the right time. You get it on, you know, and then that also, as you can see with those two people here, so there would be even a little bit of an imbalance, right? So the male person would know a lot about the female person here, but the female person would know almost nothing about the male person because she is not wearing those glasses, right? So there's a little bit of an asymmetric relationship going on here. So that would be another aspect. So what does that mean for how we build those systems, right? And for what part of it are we actually responsible, and for what parts we are not responsible, probably, or have to work with others, right? And perhaps the final, it's a little bit more of an extreme example, but perhaps for those of you who have watched The Social Dilemma first, second, you should go through all the Black Mirror episodes. And one of the Black Mirror episodes is actually about some soldiers or private soldiers, I think. They go into some war zone, and they get also constant augmentations about what they see. So they can't really decide, you know, what is real and what is virtual. And in that case, they are killing innocent people because they get them displayed as zombies or monsters or something like that, right? Just think about it a little bit. It's a fictional scenario, dystopian, but that means, oh, what can we do with modulation of an environment for good and for probably less good in that case? But it might happen. And again, the question for us is, should we work on it? Should we work on it? And it's actually a decision we all have to make individually in the end. So I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. So what are the ethical considerations? So after looking at a lot of those examples and reading a lot of papers, so we came up actually with 4 different dimensions we have to look at if we design pervasive augmented reality systems. So one group would be around data and privacy, and I will go into those ones in a sec. The other group would be around health and safety. Probably it's quite obvious. About illusion and belief, so that's a little bit more of the tricky one, and about rights and ownership, which we often also probably put aside because we don't think too much about it, right? So let's start with the data and privacy, and probably most of you, if not all of you, have heard of Google Glass. So even if that is from a definition point of view, is not really strictly an augmented reality device, because Google Glass, do you know Google Glass? Okay, so why do I say that's not an augmented reality device?
It's just like a separate screen. It's like having a screen.
Yes, yeah. And that's the point. So it's more like you're carrying an old mobile phone screen with you all the time, but it's not really registered in the real world, right? But still, we can learn a lot of. It was a wake-up call. Yeah, you saw it. But still, we can learn a lot of things from it, because augmented reality glasses would look similar and would work similar, and even more convincing, right? So one problem is it has a built-in cameras and sensors, right? So which capture everything, and that's why we had those problems with Google Glass around the Bay Area when the people walked around with it, and then there was a certain resistance in public space where they said, no, we don't want to see those glasses here, right? And of course, there's a second aspect: is how do you signal to others that you are now observed, even if you're just looking at the screen. In addition, nobody knows what you are seeing, right? The Alex example would be, I see, oh, Alex. So, but you don't know what I'm seeing, right? And that's a problem in itself. So we can learn a lot from that, right? And fortunately, in some countries, there are stricter rules about privacy. Not here yet, right? So, for instance, the GDPR in Europe, it sets more a strict, framework around, what can and should be captured when. But it's not as strict as it would say, oh, no, we can't have that. It still allows for pervasive augmented reality to happen, which is a good thing, okay? So there's a very recent project, just came out a couple of days ago, I would say, right? Facebook's project ARIVE. So Facebook is working on augmented reality glasses like all the others. And so they say, yeah, but we have to test it first. What does that really mean? If we would have those, if there were those glasses, what would it mean in particular for privacy reasons? So I see a grin already in the audience. This is interesting. Facebook, privacy, oh, interesting. Oh, okay, but they do it. And I won't go too much into the Facebook discussion here, but we can have that discussion. I'm happy to do it. But first I want to show what those glasses are actually. They are not augmented reality glasses, right? So they are glasses which are purely used for researching. How would it be, what would be captured with those glasses if there were augmented reality, pervasive augmented reality glasses? Always worn, right? Nice form factor, more like prescription glasses, all the sensors built into it. And this is what they actually do. But the main computational aspect is actually outsourced to the mobile phone. And the main thing is there's no display in it, right? It just, see-through glasses. But what it does, it already captures, it does, some, nice SLAM tracking, and it builds an environment and so on and so forth. And that's all, stored and then transmitted to the Facebook servers with some constraints around that. And so they trial that now with a group, I think, of 100 or so Facebook employees only in San Francisco, I think. San Francisco and Seattle, I think. So, so this is what they do, and they see that already as okay, there's something in it here, right? And not only that. So if you combine that, and they say in their with face recognition, and you can, because there's lots of that face recognition out there which works perfectly fine, and I just picked one of those here. They say in their guidelines on how to use the ARIA project that the glasses will not do face recognition, right? So which sounds great, but Of course, the glasses do not do the face recognition. They are not there. The computational power is not there, right? But of course, you can always do face recognition. So I'm a little bit suspicious here what is going on here. But let's say you combine that. What does that mean, right? What does that mean? You have those glasses. You have pervasive augmented reality glasses with all those capabilities. So what can we do about it? So let's say we have those pervasive. Now we have to wake up again, right? Warm up. We have those pervasive augmented reality glasses. We have all those capabilities built into it, either now or in 5 years' time, doesn't matter. So what we as engineers, as designers, as developers, what could we do to mitigate those effects or to make them, or to work around privacy concerns, say? I take ideas.
You have to have like all of the processing on the device, like if the data's leaving, they could be stored somewhere and they can like use it later for, like they say, oh, we're not doing facial recognition now, but then 5 years after when no one cares, they'll just run through and again or something like that.
So you would try to keep everything on the device. Would have a little bit of a downside, right? Because you actually lose out on all the capabilities which you would have by having a network device, which is actually most of the functionality, I would say. It's a little bit like your mobile phone. You would only use it, local data and local. You can use the calculator. Okay. What else? Okay, but it would be one. So there would be more about who owns the data and where's the data stored and what is done with it. So if I extend your thought, then I would say, okay, I'm in control of my data, and if I want to share it, then I do it more actively. Right, so if I want to share it with Facebook or with Google or with whomever, I'm in control. I mean, I get that. Yeah. So we are running around with those pervasive augmented reality glasses, and we designed them, and we do actually, we do. So what do we do? Privacy.
You could have a system where it doesn't recognize faces, but other pervasive AR glasses, it only gives you information about people who've opted in by wearing them.
Okay, so you have an opt-in system. Say, okay, I'm part of that, new hip group of PAR users, and that group would have those functionalities enabled, and others would not. Is that what you're saying, Steve?
Yeah, and you don't need to do face recognition. Then you can just have RFID in the glasses.
Yep, got that. Yep. Okay. Any other thoughts?
To have regulations about the usage of certain types of data can be stored only for a certain duration of time, must be stored with different security regulations, etc.
Yeah. So regulations around data, collection and use and storage and transmission. Yeah, very good. That links into your topic. Yeah, very good. One more. Go on.
My point against what Ryan was saying would be, well, you can opt in to share the data that you're capturing, but you're capturing my data. I have not opted in.
Yeah.
Well, you could do it so that if it was a sort of a Facebook-based thing, that you had to log in your own profile to use the glasses. If it was recognizing someone else's face, it would have to check whether you were their friend or something on Facebook. So you can only access data that you were allowed to by them pressing accept previously.
So it would be really a closed group thing, right? So you would have, there would be really that kind of trusted group of users. Yeah, okay. Okay, a couple of more ideas. So one thing is that we say, and the Facebook project does that, but in a little bit of a different way, so that at least you signal when you are capturing, but probably with true pervasive augmented reality glasses, that would be always on, right? I mean, there is, because it's a continuous use. This is probably more for the transition time where I say we turn it on off. Oh yes, you.
Your laptop has like it says your camera's working.
Yeah.
But how many laptops did you see with the little double thing across the thing?
Yes.
So you can have a light on there, but are people going to trust it?
Yeah, and that's a big question. That's a super question. Right?
The other thing is part of the thing that's not the data, probably something to talk about in the future, is that there's a camera that you don't trust. You're not going to behave the same way or interpret the world in the same way as you did.
And even worse, if Holger's is on, I can maybe dodge or avoid his.
Yeah.
But when you all have it on, what it means. Basically, it's a minority majority game. So at
Yeah,
some point, I have to leave.
The other point is, even if you indicate that this camera is on, these devices will have many other cameras that they simply use to capture all the information about the environment. What's preventing the system from using those cameras to capture this instead of, let's say, this world capture camera that is recording? And if you disable those, then the whole device becomes unusable.
Yeah.
And is it still listening to the microphone as well?
Yeah. It's the same story. It's the microphones. The camera is actually obvious. And then there's the microphones, the other sensors. And we talked about last time, I actually have at the end of the miscellaneous slides, I have one slide of a random. I don't know whether you are out there, but so of you, wearing the head-mount display with the, from the empathic computing lab and with the EEG and stuff. So it's lots of data we might want to capture for the new user experience and whatever we want to do with it. But the flip side is, actually we should be quite careful about what we really capture and for what reason and for how long. And the trust question is the main question, I guess. This is the question. So do we trust that technology or the device or the provider or whatever it is, right? And so I think this is where Facebook has another good start, I think, with the glasses market. And perhaps that might also be one of the reasons why the Google glasses were not super successful, right? There was always that kind of, what do they do with my data? Because they are mainly data driven. So for instance, let's say those glasses would have been produced by Dell or HP, then there would be less of that concern, I think, because there's less of an obvious link between data capturing and but still it could be there. So we don't know, right? Okay, I still wanted to say with the signaling that we capture, that it can be hacked. That's true. And for instance, for the Facebook glasses, they have a tiny white light on it, right? And I think that's already starting a little bit of cheating, right? Because a tiny white light, it could be anything, right? It could be just to brighten up the environment or whatever. It's just not. So I would rather do a red blink, right? And even a beep, 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 right? Like when you are in reverse gear, just to signal. But of course, that might defeat the purpose of having a pervasive augmented reality experience, right? Okay, beep, yeah. The other option is actually always, and if you have watched The Social Dilemma, that's probably what they propose. It's somehow, we throw more technology at it, and it's probably, there's a truth to that. So we make sure with some mechanisms that we maintain privacy with technological means. So we use the recognition software or mechanisms we have to maintain privacy. But it's so difficult to do, and probably it needs a lot of research, right? How to do that, and way more than we do these days, right? Of course, we can put in the environment, or we can capture. So I think Tobias' the idea last time was, we know the position and of the users already. And or we have some signs or whatever in the environment that can be automatic or visual readable, human readable, so that we don't want to have it in certain areas, right? So please don't capture inside here. Or in the Facebook example, it is they say, okay, we exclude, I don't know, locker rooms and bathrooms and prayer rooms and all those things, right? So, but the question is, where does privacy start and end, right? There are some obvious examples and there are less obvious examples. But in that case, it would help to just signal that and say, no, don't do it here. Don't, please, no hands-free cameras, right? Yeah. And that point which Alex brought up is really, I think that's the big, it's a regulation thing, right? We need probably a much stronger interdisciplinary work on it between us and and other disciplines to make better policies and to have ideas and frameworks around it. Okay. Health and safety, right? It is about physical and psychological well-being. This is what health is about, right? So when it comes to pervasive augmented reality, so we actually identified 3 areas where it might be a little bit critical, the health and safety issues. So one is the long-term use of it, right? So long-term use of always those glasses on, constant mediation of the environment. So what does that do to your, not only to your the physical or physiological changes which it might make, but also to your whole perceptual and mental world. The other one is perceptual distraction. That's actually very similar to head-up displays or other things where we are distracted all the time. So what does that mean if we wear those glasses? So it's actually quite a fine line. And so, for instance, Tobias and Jonathan, Alex are working on that. So what does that mean? What is a subtle way, and that also has, again, you know, perceptual issues and so on. And of course, what is the new way how we interact with information and with each other, right? When we have that in terms of especially psychological well-being. Okay. So I have a whole list here. I will just skip that, and there's a lot of things we might have to consider. I just give one example from I think it's some city in Germany. There's a German phrase, right?
Yeah.
Where they meat is murder. So it's interesting. I think it's Smith's album, isn't it? So they put into the street those red, you know, lights, just to warn you about an approaching streetcar, right? And that is mainly in that case because normally you walk, you know, head down on the street looking onto your phone screen. So this is one of those health and safety aspects which would play into, if we have that here, we have to do something about it, right? We have to, if we always have that augmentation, what do we do about the distracting aspect of it, right? Okay. Illusion and belief. This is actually the tricky one. This is the tricky one. And that plays also into that Black Mirror scenario. So what we see, what do we believe about it? Or what is there an illusion happening first? And second, does that lead to a certain belief about reality, right? So what we actually often want to do with augmented reality is we want to do the magic, right? The coherence, you know, virtual, real, aligned, and for whatever purposes, you know, for entertainment purposes or for whatever design purposes, we want to integrate the virtual and the real as good as we can. And that's fair enough. That's fair enough, right? We are often after the perfect illusion, right? So when we use virtual reality normally or standard, you know, augmented reality glasses, these days not pervasive augmented reality glasses, actually the device gap, the so-called device gap, helps us to distinguish between augmented reality or mixed reality and virtual reality and reality, right? Because in the moment we put them on, at least during that, because we don't use them for a long period of time, we are aware of that, oh, I'm now under the, you know, goggles. Probably what I'm experiencing is probably not the pure reality. And if I put them off, probably that's reality again, right? But now, really with the pervasive augmented reality glasses, it's more the disappearing interface. You're wearing them all the time. So that device gap actually does not apply any longer, right? So what do we do about that to perhaps signal that if we want to or have to, what is real and what is virtual here, right? So in that example, Johnny's example about, you know, what they put together different virtual and real objects in a table environment, and it's probably hard to tell what is virtual and what is real in that scenario. But the real point is, if we wear that all the time and we get all the time the mediation of reality, that illusion, which we formally know it is just an illusion, might turn into a belief, because it's so constant that the illusion turns into, oh, this is reality. This is, I mean, there's no distinction between before and after. It's part of the environment, and that can be used for a lot of purposes, but also there's some problems, I guess, right? So what can we do about it? Oh, you can't probably read that really. So what can we do about it? So we want to, let's say, we want to show to the user what is real and what is virtual, right? For whatever reason, for health and safety reasons, or for privacy reasons, or for communication reasons, or whatever we think. So how can we do that without destroying the whole thing and switching it off? There's a little Babel fish which always says, this is not reality, man. Here we go.
If I apply an effect to the virtual object, so maybe it's got like a red outline or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's what you know, Jonathan and Alex and Tobias are doing, right? We point at things, right? You say, okay, this is an arrow, or this is virtual, or we outline that, or something like that. Yeah, very good, very good. What else?
But just like a temporary button that you hold down that just stops displaying things of the real world.
Yeah, also, yeah. So you just probe that, right? So you walk around and think, oh, I should probably double check the environment. Click, the people are not here. Oh, interesting. Oh, you know, they are here again. So, and that would probe that, yeah, on, off. Yeah, why not? Okay, any other? often what we do actually practically when we do VR often, or more in AR actually, we actually probe that, right? We poke and try, no, it's the real Tobias. It's not the, not the avatar Tobias, right? When it comes to the inner working, so there's actually that breaking the magician's code idea, right? And that is that thing, right? So we highlight or we probe and we say, okay, I want to see what is the real and what is the virtual thing. And back in the days, they wanted to have that as well. So we would have some sort of, it's not outlining, it's more like, what is the inner principle of it? Show me, why do we see that here, right? Okay, that's derived from those data, which feed into that. And that's why I see that kind of social profile of Alex here, right? It's Twitter, Facebook. It's actually was updated last week, or it's quite outdated. So that's inner workings, right? We break the magic. We break the magic for that purpose, or we just, purposefully we crafted, the nice, coherent blending between the real and the virtual, and we just say, okay, switch it off for a moment, and then you see that point like down here, right? So it is, or what you said actually was yeah, we highlight something, right? So what in that scene, what is real, what is virtual, we don't know. Okay, we have a halo effect, and then we halo that out, right? We say, okay, that is, before that I couldn't read. Now I see, that pedestrian was probably a virtual inset here, right? And no one. Okay. So final aspect of the 4 is actually rights and ownership. So if we have that constant augmentation of the real environment, then those virtual things become a reality, right? They are there. So what does that mean for? I mean, normally we only talk about tangible things in the environment or whatever. If I write something on the wall, then it's a physical, it's ink on the whiteboard, and it stays there. And you can see it, Steffi, and you can see it, Rosa, and it is there, right? But it might be, if we all wear those glasses, who is allowed to augment actually things in the environment? Who is allowed to paint my garden in some different colors, or place a nice wee swastika there, which I can't do anything about it? So it is not obvious, it's not there, but it is there, right? So it actually that raises a lot of questions about, who has the authority to augment. What about the digital twin ownership? So we have the reality. What is then the reality? We have the digital twin, which we often work with. So who owns what of our environment, right? Hijacking of public places. We had that a lot with, Pokemon Go things, right? So there, yeah. I mean, yeah, okay. Virtual graffiti, right? I just smear something. That's it. So these are examples like that, right? And that is already happening, right? So, and what do you do about it? What do you do about it, right? It's not Thomas actually, right? But, yeah, I just want to pseudonymize it. It is Daniel. Yeah. But he's not a liar. No, yeah. It's okay. So you see, so we have to think about that as well, right? And there's one aspect to it where we probably need the lawyers and the experts in that field to help us out. But it's also what are our technical possibilities to work on it, right? Okay, so I will show you in the last couple of minutes one little case example. It's actually a case example from in education. It's quite valid. So it is about if we use AR, VR in education, and there are a couple of studies, and that study has just picked that study because it actually was a proper study. They studied, okay, what happens if we introduce VR and AR in schools and then teach little children with it. So, and then there's a lot of positive aspects about it, right? It's really that it can really enhance the learning experience because it's way better than just, repeating things from books or paper, or the teacher standing there and just telling things, right? So it's facilitating learning process in new ways. The kids can try out things. It's hands-on, it's interactive, it's great, and you have way more resources at hand. But it is unclear what are the long-term effects of it. We don't know. And for those of you who have kids, you know that you're always worried about that. Oh, okay. So should I expose them to that or not? What does it do with, if there are already issues, let's say psychological issues, does that amplify that, or is it actually as a positive effect? And what do the kids see as real and not as real, because they are more willing to accept like a magician. Oh yeah, of course, you know, he pulls that rabbit out of the hat. Why not? I mean, yeah. But where we say, oh yeah, that can't be really, where we have a better judgment mechanisms, right, for it. And of course, you know, what kind of data should be gathered off from our kids in that case, right? So this is really discussions which we have to have, and I don't have the answers for that. So where to from here? Where to from here? So I would propose, I have another cheesy photo for that. I would propose that we think about our duties. We think about those 4 areas of duties where we say, oh, okay, if we do it, we just iterate through those and say, oh, okay, I check, is that actually fair or good for my employer or for the client? And do I do a good job in that regard, and so on and so forth. So those 4 dimensions, what are our duty areas? And another cheesy image is that one. So, and if we also iterate through those 4 areas, and then you read our super paper, which will come out in some super magazine, probably tomorrow, super soon. So you can then just go through that one and say, okay, probably I check against those criteria, and whatever decision you make, it's okay, as long as it is an informed decision and not just because technology can do it, that's why we do it, right? And so that would be that area. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for perhaps questions.